Everyone. We are hosting an event. How should the Czech state protect companies from foreign predators? European Values Center for Security Policy is hosting this event together with Center for International Private Enterprise. My name is Andrea Michalcová. I'm Deputy Director for Programs at the European Values Center for Security Policy. On my right-hand side, we have our director, Jakub Janda. We have today our panelist, Jeff Lightfoot, Program Director for Europe from Center for International and Private Enterprise. Other panelists, we have Pavel Diviš, Chairman of the Czech Taiwanese Business Chapter in the Czech Republic. Then we have Ota Šimak, Director of Department of Trade Policy and International Economic Organizations from Ministry of Industry and Trade of the Czech Republic. We have Matěj Šimalčík from Slovakia, Executive Director of Central European Institute of Asian Studies. And we will have one more panelist who will be joining us in a few minutes. Mr. Weston Stacy, Executive Director of American Chamber of Commerce in the Czech Republic. So, Jeff, I will give the floor to you. So please give your introductory remarks.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Andrea, for the kind introduction. And thanks to you, Jakub, and the whole European Values Center for hosting what we think is a really timely and important event for facilitating it. I'm Jeff Lightfoot. I'm the program director for Europe and the director for CIPE's new Europe office based in Bratislava, which we just launched this month with the mission to grow and expand our programs across Central and Southeast Europe. And I'm actually dialing in today from Košice, Slovakia, where CIPE is. We have double trouble with the AmChams today. We've got the event today with Weston dialing in, and tonight we're co-hosting a reception with AmCham here in Eastern Slovakia. So it's great to be engaging with these local AmChams on really important issues. CIPE is a core institute of the National Endowment for Democracy and an affiliate, a nonprofit affiliate of the United States Chamber of Commerce. Our mission and mandate is to strengthen democracy around the world through private enterprise and market reform. And we do this by working and supporting business associations, chambers of commerce, economic think tanks, and other groups engaged in strengthening the democratic processes in their home countries. And it will come as no surprise to you that at CIPE, we believe the business community is a central pillar in any society, and that the private sector has a key interest and a critical role to play, not only in ensuring prosperous societies and inclusive economies, but also in safeguarding our democratic societies. It's an honor to open today's event focused on how the Czech state can protect companies from foreign predators, or as we would call it at CIPE, corrosive capital. This project aligns with CIPE's Global Corrosive and Constructive Capital Series, which is one of our flagship initiatives within our organization. Our constructive capital work supports initiatives by the business community and civil society to strengthen the investment climate in their home countries through whether it's advocacy with the public sector or organic reforms within the business community, whether it's to reduce corruption, business integrity, business ethics, initiatives within the private sector that will make the investment environment more attractive to credible foreign investment. Alternatively, our corrosive capital initiative supports work by civil society and business to advocate with public officials to close governance gaps that allow foreign corrosive capital to take hold, similar to the examples that you'll hear more about today from Jakub and his team. When Jakub approached us about this project, we took a particular interest in the broader project because of the methodology that it promised. It brought together a process of sounding out not only national security experts, government officials, but also lawyers and private sector voices, associations on how to safeguard the Czech economy from foreign corrosive capital. We think this is crucial and think that this model could serve as something of a template for neighboring countries to consider emulating as we take on more work on foreign investment screening, not only in Central Europe, but Moldova, Ukraine, and other places. A variety of governments in the European Union and neighboring states have worked to develop foreign investment screening mechanisms to protect economies from corrosive capital while safeguarding real and legitimate economic interests. Those processes have not always been perfect, to say the least, and sometimes have not positively engaged the business community. It's our view at CIPE that the private sector, if it's alienated from this process, the government risks doing harm that ultimately detracts from the overall investment environment and deters constructive capital from entering the country, which is certainly not the goal of these initiatives. So With that said, we're really delighted to have Weston and Pavel joining in today's event, and that other business voices have been pretty heavily involved in the shaping of this process. That was really the thing that was the greatest interest of us at SIPE, and we were really pleased to sponsor it. So with that said, I'd like to go ahead and stop here and really look forward to the discussion that follows, to Jakub's presentation, to the insights of all the panelists, with particular interest in hearing from the Czech private sector, and look forward to reading the report that EVC produces on this topic. So thank you, Andrea.
Thank you, Jeff. We were muted. I'm sorry about that. We will be sharing the presentation now, and Jakub, floor is yours.
We'll actually slowly look into the presentation. So where we are now is that the European Value Center, we are more of a national security focused organization, but what we actually see is that there are risks connected to economic and technological influence coming quite often from the outside of the Czech Republic, but also of our allied countries, being EU and NATO member states and countries in our close neighborhood. So that is what's happening, and it does have strategic impact, not only for individual businesses, but for overall national security and liberal democratic posture within our region in Central Europe, but also within Czech Republic. So very specifically, we have been very happy to partner with SIPE and look into, let's say, do a very initial mapping, I would call it, or structuring of our discussion for upcoming months and years over what should be our response, our Czech state response, and Czech society and expert organizations response into this overall game. Because there are multiple layers of it, so there is so much for one individual organization to do. We are thinking, let's do a pilot project where we look at what's the state of play and what are the key areas where more work on policy or responses need to be done from various organizations, including our own, but including the business associations and including the state institutions. So that's the mapping, and I'll briefly get into what we think are the most important parts. So looking into our report will be published around a week from now. We will get more inputs from this discussion, and I will share with you right now what we think are the most important takeaways. Just a side note, we at EVC are responsible for whatever we say or write down in the report. SIPE is supporting it, but we are responsible politically and legally as well. So the question is, how should the Czech government, Czech state, to protect Czech economy, Czech individual businesses and organizations from foreign predators and malign influence? So basically, how should we look at the corrosive capital problem from the point of view of first the business leaders and second the governing institutions? Because until recently, I would say this has not been on the agenda of strategic institutions in the Czech Republic. Usually our national security apparatus looks at the traditional threats in a very traditional manner, which in our case means that very little thinking has been done over what are possible threats and corrosive capital issues within the technological and economic domain. So that is where Czech Republic, and I think many countries in Central Europe have been. So that's what we did. What we did during this summer as EVC, we had a team of researchers, and we did 30 interviews with stakeholders, meaning insiders, people who work in this business. So business leaders and entrepreneurs, people who represent business associations, but also people who represent legal firms, which actually are looking at which quite often are working in close connection with investors and Czech and other businesses in the Czech Republic. So they are an important actor. We have spoken to many of our government officials from the key ministries, meaning Trade Ministry, Defense Ministry, Foreign Ministry, our security establishment as well, because they are the ones who at the end could actually move some policies forward. We have spoken to scholars, think tankers, and other institutions in this field. So 30 interviews, we basically asked, what are you afraid of in this area of corrosive capital discussions? And what should be done in the future to actually limit your fears? Or how should the Czech government in the future, how should the Czech state help you or protect you? Because that's basically what we think the state should be doing, not over-regulating the environment, but helping where it's necessary and needed and demanded from the business community as well. So those were our questions. And I'll share with you what we learned. So we have first tried to conceptualize over what the problem is. So meaning, what are all the tools which we could see, which foreign powers, and in this case, it's mainly the PRC, mainland China, actually uses as tools of economic influence. Well, we are not saying that all economic connections or links are bad, but there are many of those who are used for political and technological purposes as well by the government of China, and quite often proxies are used for this. So the list is quite long. I will just share a couple of examples. Strategic and predatory acquisitions. That's where I think the most common, most pressing response has already been triggered at the level of the EU with the FDI screening mechanisms put in place in some countries of the EU, including the Czech Republic. So that's the most obvious response area, let's say. In the Czech Republic, very specifically, we have seen elite capture done by foreign powers, mainly China and Russia. Which then have impact on the business environment and the will of businesses to work with the state in general. We have seen intellectual property thefts, the usual set of tools which is happening, but quite often what we heard from the business community is that there is very little of what the Czech government is actually doing in preventing it, or at least helping individual or collective Czech business community in responding and making sure they are not the victims, but they are being protected by the state in cases where it makes sense. So those were our questions. Basically, main areas how we structure what we think should be done in the future are 7 policy areas. Let's say areas where we believe new let's say measures and practices should be adopted in the future, while there are multiple, but we think it's important to prioritize, since Czech Republic is a country of 10 million, meaning that we are not a huge country, but we are a country of mid-size, which have limited capacities at the governmental level, but also at the level of the business. So we have focused on 7 areas which we think are most important. I mean, to put it in a nutshell, starting for the first one, preventing or stopping corrosive capital inflow into the Czech economy. That's what we have the FDI screening for. We'll talk about it in a second, but it's clearly what we would like to stop, because that's something what since 2015, Czech Republic has seen in some numbers, maybe not as huge as Hungary, for example, but we have seen some of these efforts by corrosive capital actors, in our case, mainly Chinese proxies, Chinese government's proxies here. We have seen economic pressure and disruptive practices, mainly after some entities within the Czech Republic actually decided to partner or befriend institutions in Taiwan, be it the mayor of Prague, be it the speaker of the Czech Senate, or other organizations, including the businesses. There has been a response by the Chinese government pressuring or threatening to pressure individual Czech companies and state institutions, which is not friendly, and the Czech state should be ready to respond to similar practices in the future. We have seen, let's say, a focus on supply chains. That is a clear policy discussion during and after the COVID pandemic, because we believe Czech Republic should think about which areas should be considered strategic, be it strategic technologies or strategic materials, since in the future, I'm afraid we might see more crises like the current pandemic, which will have impact on supply chains. And we as the Czech Republic might end up in a situation where we think, okay, we are dependent on somebody who is not friendly to us. So how can we change it? How can we actually support the fact that, or the aim to be not independent on everybody, but let's say only to have more dependence with more friendly entities and businesses, not the ones who actually want to do harm to us. There's also a focus on illegitimate financial flows, basically the dirty money laundering. That's very visible, and unfortunately, the Czech Republic serves as one of the hubs of dirty money laundering across Europe. That's quite visible, mainly related to Russia and Central Asian autocracies as well. But two last areas to focus on, we think. First, let's say, increasing the overall understanding of what China is and how does it act across institutions, not only within national security establishment, but also outside of it, where this knowledge and expertise is pretty much missing at the personnel level within many institutions. And the last point I would focus on is protecting Czech universities and research from foreign predators, which is I think not really where there would be a huge focus and flow at this moment. So what we did is, if you look to the left, those are, let's say, the tools of corrosive capital influence, the ones which we think are happening. We clearly see examples across Europe that they are happening. So let's say those acquisitions or targeted acquisitions, which are not always friendly, not always only commercially focused or motivated. Then we see quite a lot of economic social dumping happening at the same time as well. So on the left, there's the tools which are being used against us. And on the right, there are policy options and measures against that, meaning what can liberal democracies, what can countries, together the state and business and non-state actors do together against that. Clearly, there's the FDI, foreign direct screening investment, the FDI screening mechanism, which is actually put in place in the Czech legislation and also within the Czech administration. We will have our colleague Ota Šimak from the Czech Trade Ministry, as he is in charge of the process, who will be speaking about it and what they believe should be a move forward. So that's good. Czech Republic already has this law, already has a team which is working on that. That's something what is not so visible among every country in Europe. And I'll focus on the next slide as well, where we see quite often, let's say, other legitimate, sometimes illegal practices, be it basically IP theft in general or transfer of knowledge, including the dirty money laundering, where Czech Republic has been and is being used as a platform for this illegitimate activity. And clearly there are many actions which should and could be taken against that. So could be the Magnitsky Act, so basically human rights and corrosive capital focused sanctions. This law has not yet been approved in the Czech Republic, even though in the previous or currently ending term of the current chamber of the Czech deputies, the new bill, basically Czech version of Magnitsky Act, has been proposed but not confirmed, not approved. So hopefully this will happen with the next chamber of deputies after the Czech elections this October. So the Magnitsky Act is one of the options. Then a lot of work with the universities, which I'll finish up on in a second. And we believe that for elite capture prevention and more transparency of the business environment, Czech Republic needs to actually focus and I would say adopt new legislation which would be regulating lobbying activities in the Czech Republic. We could look at the US or Australian examples, the FAR legislation in the US. There are multiple examples where Czech Republic can take inspiration from. it is good noting that the Czech Republic is obliged towards the EU to actually have its own lobbying act or lobby act, which would be regulating this environment. But the current government, current parliament in the Czech Republic has not approved it yet. So we again expect it in the next chamber coming up after this October elections. And our thinking is that it needs to be actually taking into account what the foreign power influence could there be. So not only focusing on domestic lobbying, but also the one where foreign powers hire proxies to do lobbying on their behalf in the geopolitical environment. Then I think there are more instruments at the EU level which are currently being discussed and negotiated, where I believe our colleague Ota Šimak might address them as well from the position of the Czech government, where there is effort to put together something called anti-coercion instrument, where essentially if we see China blackmailing or threatening one member state, like they do to Lithuania today, for example, the EU could actually respond as a whole on, let's say, in defense of one member state. What it could be ideally something like NATO in the economic domain, meaning one attack on one of our member states, it is an attack on all of us. That's what I think ideally we would like to have, use the economic power of the EU to deter and scare off any economic aggressors against us. That would be ideal, but we'll see about if that's possible to negotiate on the EU level. I will, let's say, almost get to the end. This is a very brief diagram where we have actually codified into basically the reviews of our interviews. So on the left, you see approximately 30 people we have talked to without names, obviously, because we protect their identities because of the sensitivity of our discussions. But we have talked to those individuals from the government, from business associations, from the research and think tank community. And we have asked them, what do they think should be the priorities? So what should be the policy priorities moving forward? And then on the right, if you look, you see that that's basically what they said. What are the things they believe should be the main priorities going forward in upcoming years? So just taking them one by one, here is the more comprehensive list. So one, fine-tuning foreign investment screening mechanism. It's already in place in the Czech Republic. There is a good law which has been written and approved by the Czech Parliament. There is a team at the Ministry of Trade. There are other government entities looking into this issue. So we need to make sure collectively that the FDI screening is a success. Not only for the government, but also for the good parts of the business sector who actually would see it, and as I understand, they do see it mostly, as a protective tool for them. So it's positively understood by the business community. That would be the best option, because obviously this is basically an instrument for regulating the trade and business community, which is not always what the trade and business community likes, but here it's for a good reason, to protect foreign predators. So that should be the first area of focus in the future, we believe. The second area is let's say, focusing on strategic and dual-use technologies. Very practically, we believe that the Czech government should talk directly to the business leaderships and decide or adopt basically a framework strategy for protecting strategic technologies in various areas, so that there is more enhanced support from the government. And I'm not speaking about subsidies. I mean mainly security protection, more briefings in detail, more direct cooperation to make sure that those strategic sectors of the technologies, for example, in the Czech Republic, are well protected. So if a crisis comes again, like the pandemic or even something worse, we will be ready, and those businesses will be safe and healthy, to put it that way, as much as possible. The third area we see as a needed area of response is protecting universities and research institutions from foreign predatory practices and corrosive capital. More practically, we see that quite often we see foreign authoritarian regimes, be it Russia, China, or Iran, are trying to target our universities in Europe, and specifically in the Czech Republic, it's quite visible, trying to extract know-how and knowledge from them, be it stealing specific information or effectively cultivating assets, meaning human intelligence sources inside of the universities and research institutions, which is sometimes commercially motivated, but quite often geopolitically motivated. And there is a big area which needs more response, as Czech Republic has seen multiple examples of, let's say, Chinese malign influence and corrosive capital activities in the Czech universities, with some reaction, but not a systematic policy reaction, so that it would be well protected at this moment. So we think that should be the third area. Fourth area, there need to be more informal, non-public discussion between state, business, and universities. Because some of that conversation is happening, but what many of our business leaders to whom we have talked to privately, many of them basically voiced the concern, saying, well, we know good individual experts, officials within the government, but we don't have like a trustworthy platform where we could actually talk privately to them on regular basis, and we could basically build more trust two ways. And that's something what we heard quite often from the government officials we have talked to as well. So that would be a good area to focus on in the future. And the fifth area is actually enhancing economic positive cooperation with Taiwan, where as is publicly known, Taiwan actually creates about 5 to 6 times more new jobs in the Czech Republic than the mainland China, which is actually important for the Czech Republic. There is about 24,000 new jobs created by Taiwan, according to Czech Invest, a Czech government agency, which is good. So it's a good starting point, and so Taiwan is economically very positive and constructive in the Czech Republic, and we think that's something what the Czech Republic should use in the future on the EU level, be it a potential trade agreement with Taiwan and the EU, which might be very hard to go ahead politically, but Czech Republic has very positive, I would say, business and economic experience with Taiwan. And I'm sure Pavel Diviš from the Czech Taiwanese Business Chamber will speak about it much more, because it's public knowledge that there'll be also a Taiwanese investment delegation coming to Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Lithuania in upcoming weeks, which I think is good news. So this we believe should be the positive side of like future support for some of the bilateral businesses where Czech Republic has a good starting position in. So I'll stop now and I'll wait for discussion. Thank you for waiting.
Thank you, Jakub, for excessive summary. And now I will ask our panelists. You've seen like what we assessed overall. According to your own assessment, what should be the main priority for Czech policymakers against the Chinese corrosive capital? So who wants to start? Maybe I will give the floor to Mr. Winston Stacy from the American Chamber in the Czech Republic.
All right, so thanks very much. Apologies for joining late. Hello to Jeffrey, hello to Jakub. I'm late because I'm in Brno today, and I'm meeting with Brno universities and U.S. and Czech companies to start implementing your recommendations, Jakub. The discussion that we're going to be having today is about how to conduct research together, not just to make money, but to address the overwhelming challenge of climate change, to improve healthcare, and to, of course, address cybersecurity, because the big game and the economy has always been to get technologies or to steal technologies if you don't have them. And the next period of economic development is going to be there's going to be an even greater emphasis on technology. And those people who have technology are going to need to protect it from not just organized crime, but as Jakub said, state players. And we've seen an increasing number, or our companies are reporting an increasing number of attacks on their IT infrastructure by state players. I'm reminded that the meeting that I'm having today would not have taken place 30 years ago. The Czech Republic and the US would have been on opposite sides of this debate. And I think when we're considering all of the policy recommendations that Jakob made today, we should remember that our ultimate goal should be to eliminate the need of discussions like this, and hope that in one day all countries, Taiwan, China, the Czechia, and the US can be doing business together and pursuing the conduct of free enterprise. So we're not really trying to create a conflict between societies, but we're trying to continue a global effort to have governments that are accountable to people and acting in the people's interest. And that includes the interest of a business that are balanced between a lot of competing interests. And the issue today is that many countries are overly controlled by undemocratic governments who pursue power over the prosperity of their people and peace in the world. And so what can we do about that? I mean, the first thing that we should do is we should remain liberal democracies ourselves, right? And we need to stop taking for granted that this is going to be a permanent state. And as businesses and individuals, we need to be more involved in the life of our society, including more involved in the political life of our society by participating in political parties or supporting political parties, voting, but remembering that voting is once every, well, it's a lot, but in parliamentary elections, it's once every 4 years, but you should stay involved in between. Because the real stuff happens in between elections. That's when policies are made and implemented. So I think, number one, we need to remember that while we're criticizing other countries, each of our country faces problems at home that we need to address. The second thing is, as Jakob said, the screening process is necessary. There should be a policy to reduce the influence of foreign sovereign funds and state-controlled or influenced businesses. I think that screening process could be also complemented by rules for public procurement, which have similar restrictions to doing business with foreign sovereign funds or companies that are majorities foreign sovereign funds or state-controlled businesses or influenced businesses. And the last point I have, which is, I said it at the outset, cybersecurity and universities and businesses need to be supported more. The Czech Republic, I think, has an admirable goal of wanting to become a leading research-based economy, the country for the future. I think it's the right decision for the government, and we're hoping that it will continue on and develop over the course of the next administration and the administration after that. The key to that is for the universities to have the same level or better cybersecurity as the companies that they are doing research with, and that means investment. And I think that the investment in the cybersecurity infrastructure at universities, because if you don't have that, then you're not going to get really sensitive commercial research being done in the universities. So we suggest that the government develop recommended standards for cybersecurity in the private sector and introduce it as a criteria for doing business with the states, and then to give companies incentives to develop their cybersecurity. They may look at ways to offset the cost of that investment through tax incentives. Okay, Jakob, I'll shut up. Thanks for having me today. And again, apologies for being a bit late.
Thank you, Winston, very much. Now I will maybe give the floor to Otashimak, because you were mentioned several times during Jakub's presentation. So maybe if I may ask you to give us your point of view on these priorities and overall assessment of the screening mechanism from your position at the Ministry of Industry and Trade.
Yes, thank you for the floor, and thank you for the nice introduction of the screening system. I think that from our point of view, that was a major step for ensuring the environment of where the investment security is warranted, where the major step towards facing the so as we call it, the toxic capital incoming, the toxic acquisitions, which are aimed mainly on the strategic assets, mainly on the high tech companies which possess some strategic technologies, and which we didn't have such a law, not even the sectoral one, that was a lack in our legal system, and that was a loophole, I would say. And I'm really happy that this parliament in its term just introduced this system, and we are now working on it to screen the investments, and now it's working fully, and I think that was the major step which we are talking about. You have mentioned even some fine tuning of the system. I think that nowadays it's we are now gathering the first experience, the first year of implementing such a law. You are mentioning in your presentation maybe improving the ultimate owner, ultimate beneficiary coverage or transparency on ultimate beneficiary. I think that this can be improved. It's unfortunately not a goal which can be done by the FDI screening law. It has to be done by the other laws which are dealing with UBOs, but still there can be an improvement. But I think that the FDI screening law is sufficient as it is now. Regarding the other tools or the debate we are holding today, trade policy wise, I think that we are basically talking about resiliency of our system and resiliency of our economies, and trade policy wise, we see it that the major tool how to improve our resiliency is to have the broadest net of FTAs with our like-minded partners as possible. Which means where we have like-minded partners in third countries, we should have some agreements which we can build on our trade flows, and the broader the net is, the more resilient the system is. Of course, as we are talking about, as you were talking about the some coercive actions of some third countries. It is happening, and we are closely following the debate, which is now going on mostly in academia, in think tanks, but even the European Commission is somehow listening to this debate, and which means the preparations of the anti-coercion mechanism or anti-coercion tool. In this case, I think it's. The coercive actions are here, and so it's legitimate to have such a tool. But I would be here very vigilant on how can it be designed, because the aim should be or shall be to cause more good than bad, which means not to use the anti-coercion instrument even against some actions which are not really clear that these can be defined as coercive actions. So I mostly talk about using such an instrument between like-minded partners. Maybe in this case, I would call for, if I can, like I'm not a policymaker, but I would call for more engagement of these of our like-minded partners to introduce or to work together on such a tool, which can be then even stronger when it's used in the same way by all the like-minded partners globally. And maybe last comment on more resilience, which is not directly linked to trade policy, but still we see it from the FDI screening point of view that there should be some improvements in awareness, at least awareness among academia and high-tech companies which possess like valued research and development units and outputs mostly. And last comment I have on my list is there was noticed the FTA between the EU and Taiwan. I think that this may be today. It's maybe like from the point of view of today, it's like further future, I would say, because the FTA should be the second step after the investment treaties, which is not here today either. So I think that if we talk about something, it's the investment treaty, investment agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Otto, very much for your comments. And as you were also mentioning Taiwan, I will give floor and the possibility to react on that to Pavel Dziwisz.
Thank you. So I will, if I see the other speakers, I will try to speak behalf of Taiwan and the relation and the international business with Taiwan, but also in behalf of the SME, because I'm the owner of a technology company. We are providing metal cutting technology for companies and selling metal cutting machines. So we are dealing a lot with Asia, generally with Japan, with Taiwan, and also with China. So I can speak behalf of those segments, because this segment seems to be quite naive regarding the protection, because we do not have any. First of all, we do not have any guidelines from the government, and also from all business rules which surrounding us. Seems to be that China is completely free and we can do whatever we want. The only real law is the dual purpose or dual use. Is the only thing what we have to ask if we are delivering or buying something. But honestly speaking, I do not know any Chinese business without dual purpose. They are coming with the business offer, but there is always some meaning behind why they are offering to deal with, especially Czech Republic, because Czech Republic is so small for China that we are under the recognition of the Chinese business. So the business always have second meaning, and usually starting with data mining. That's the easiest thing. They are offering to do business with the Czech entrepreneurs. The negotiation takes always a very long time, takes year, two, and the business is always adjusted at almost at the limit of the capacity of the Czech company. So the adjustment looks realistic from our perspective, but from Chinese perspective is adjusted quite good, quite clever. And then during the 1 year of negotiation, we are just giving out the data. We are giving out the technology. We are giving out a lot of other informations, which we do not even realize they might be dangerous for us. And so this is one big threat that the SME doesn't protect at all. It's very naive to dealing with China. That's the first. Second huge hole, I think, is the academic and the university area, because we are coming with our own understanding that knowledge is for everyone, and knowledge is something what we have to share and what we have to exchange. But the universities is one of the huge channel of losing data, because there's a lot of projects are made upon the order from China, and we are making studies and we are supplying really a lot of data to China, and so that's something what would have to be somehow set on the public, would have to be clearly mentioned as a dangerous activity. And back to the real business environment here in Czech Republic. Czech Republic doesn't have any definition of strategic segments of business, then strategic technology, and probably strategic capacity. If the technology is common, but we do not have the strategic capacity by our control. So if we do not have such a definition, so there is no rule for us how we have to behave or how we have to act. And if we make such a definition, then automatically we have to say what kind of restriction will be acceptable for the business. And on the other side, if we have restriction, what kind of support or rules will the entrepreneurs get to support, for example, the ownership inside Czech Republic of the strategic segments, technologies, and production. So that's for the beginning from my side.
Thank you very much, Pavel. Maciej, so can you tell us also your assessment of these priorities, how you see a little bit outside of the Czech Republic from Slovakia, and maybe if there are any similarities or differences in the development in this area, in these countries? Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea, for the question, and hello, everyone. It's good to be here. I think you provided a very good overview of what are the possibilities to do with regards to corrosive capital in your presentation, but I, of course, want to make several remarks on maybe the priorities and the mechanics of how these tools should be implemented. Yes, you mentioned I'm from Slovakia, but actually the problem we are tackling here in Slovakia is actually very, very similar to what you are dealing with in the Czech Republic. And to some extent, it's actually connected to the Czech problem, as we actually see that Chinese corrosive capital, especially in Slovakia, is usually tied to also Chinese corrosive capital in the Czech Republic. So when we are talking about local oligarchs that usually operate transnationally between Slovakia and Czech Republic, and that they have ties to China, it always has effects not only in Czech Republic but in Slovakia as well. Slovakia is maybe a little bit behind on this debate compared to Czech Republic currently, as, for example, we do not have a working FDI screening mechanism just yet. It's still under development, and it's heavily inspired by the Czech law. So thanks for that, that you provide this inspiration for us. Nevertheless, when we are talking about specific priorities on how to deal with corrosive capital, we should actually, first of all, realize that the problem is multifaceted, and thus the response has to be multifaceted. We cannot single out only one measure that will solve most of the problems. It always has to come in cooperation or coordination with other tools that will allow us to deal with it. Of course, FDI screening is a very important one, but maybe we can focus also a little bit more on what can specific companies do. And so for example, we should look into their internal compliance mechanisms, how they deal with such problems and possible malign effects of corrosive capitals. Of course, already big corporations tend to have these kind of internal mechanisms in place to deal with corruption, misappropriation of funds, etc. But corrosive capital and its effects on corporate governance is something new for them. And this has not really been dealt with internally for most companies. Actually, one of the biggest motivations for companies, at least here in the CEE region, to have any compliance mechanism in place is actually that it allows them to exculpate themselves from criminal charges if something is done by the employee, that it will not be counted towards the criminal liability of the company. And if actually some of these activities connected to corrosive capital were to be criminalized in the future in our domestic legal orders, or sanctioned by administrative fines or something similar, then I think this would create a lot of incentives for companies to start taking this problem seriously and actually to create internal rules on how to deal with business partners with from authoritarian regimes that cause problems. Of course, there's a responsibility within the entire business structures or supply chains how to deal with the problem. So, for example, a very important tool previously in dealing with corruption in supply chains was that big companies obligate their subcontractors to take on some anti-corruption pledges or anti-corruption obligations as part of the contracts. So maybe this is another way how to look at the problem, that responsible big businesses can lead the way in this regard and motivate the smaller businesses down the supply chain to adopt these kind of anti-corrosive capital measures. Of course, the state itself can be a big motivator in this if they include such anti-corrosive capital measures in the domestic public procurement rule that would not allow companies that are entangled with the Chinese corrosive capital or Russian corrosive capital to partake on public tenders. So this is one area that I think we should focus on. Another area that we need to really focus on specifically is revolving door issue between businesses that are operating in China, for example, or Chinese businesses that are operating here on one hand and the state on another. And Czech Republic is a very good example of why this is a problem, as we have seen repeated revolving doors occurring between Czech government officials or diplomats going to Chinese companies, working for them, and then returning back to the state. And actually, when I was looking into this Czech and also Slovak revolving door regulations, we see that they are actually quite outdated and only very narrow in scope, and as they do not take into account the complexities of current business environment and current trade relations with China, Russia, or in other authoritarian actors. So this is something that should be very specifically targeted in the current laws on conflict of interests of public officials.
Thank you, Maciej, very much for this overview as well. Jeff, are you with us? I would have one question for you. Okay.
The video works. It was a little spotty before.
Yeah. Jeff, could you maybe please compare the situation regionally from your point of view, from what SAIP is doing, for example, in Western Balkans or in the Eastern Partnership countries? Is there anything positive? What can Czech Republic be inspired in these regions, or maybe even you can name negative aspects as well? Thank you.
Sure, and you know, I've got some colleagues in the line who probably could chime in on that with a lot more detail than I could. But it's interesting, you know, you see different examples of I think one of the key examples we've perhaps seen is, you look at Ukraine, they have a foreign investment screening law, but, enforcement and the teeth behind these laws is crucial. And that's why, we've put an emphasis on the process. You can't just declare something is done and then walk away from it and expect it to work to perfection. And that's why, from our perspective, having these, I think Weston really hit it on the head. You can pass legislation, you can have elections, but it's kind of that hard work that takes place in between, the democratic processes that are so important to this to highlight. So I think that's one thing that we would say that we've seen. Secondly, we're interested in, thinking about how different countries can learn from each other and better coordinate from these examples. And I think Maciej just identified that degree to which Slovakia is, looking at the Czech example, and to the degree to which we can see countries coordinate within the region on how to tackle that is another thing that we think is really important, because at the end of the day, these are kind of, particularly if you look at the PRC example, I think it's important to highlight that corrosive capital can come from, outside the PRC. And I think, as Maciej indicated, often preys on these governance gaps that are not, unique to any one particular country, but some sort of coordination, among them is really critical. We've seen some interesting examples, in Serbia as well, which some pretty high-profile environmental issues there, where it's actually in some cases it's pretty simple. It's actually getting the business community sees a really vested interest in fighting for a common application of environmental regulations, but for something that might seem rather innocuous in and of itself, but actually allows in this case, sort of Chinese investors have been allowed to skirt those regulations and don't create a level playing field that creates a real problem for business. And so these are some of the interesting examples we've seen for our work of what it is that motivates the business community to take a stand on these issues, because business is going to come at this from a different perspective, from a national security hawk. And so those are just a few sort of illustrative examples of some things that we've seen from our work. And I think it really demonstrates from our perspective, again, that's why we're supporting this, the need for these processes to take place both within the countries, but then for some sort of mechanism and sharing that allows for an exchange of lessons learned across borders about how to deal with these challenges.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I would also give you the floor to all of you if you have any questions to your fellow panelists, so feel free to ask. So I'm not the only one asking the whole time, but meanwhile, okay, Jakub?
Can I ask you, Weston, we've been talking, but it's really up to you what you want to share on the cybersecurity aspect. So basically, what would you expect ideally from the Czech state, from the Czech government to do to kind of protect the free and clean business here, in be it Czech and Czech American investment and companies? So is there something that you would like kind of to demand from the Czech government, if I may ask?
Sorry. So I'll answer shortly, and then they're calling me. So I think Atta probably can answer the question about what the Czech government can do better than I can. The one thing that I see like immediately that they could do is increase the funding to universities to build their cybersecurity systems up, and make them, as I said, at levels equal to what the companies that are doing research there have, or superior. And then there's a need, and I think that I forgot who said it, but the small businesses in the Czech Republic, they have a lot of tech that needs to be protected, and it's a big investment to constantly keep your cybersecurity up to date. And the Czech government could step in there with some sort of accelerated depreciation or tax incentives, so that companies could recoup that investment quickly. And that, I think, goes primarily for SMEs that are doing a lot of tech research. With that, I think you may know more. Yeah.
Ota, do you want to add something?
Thank you for the floor. And I mean, like that as SMEs, it's good to point on them, because for first they are maybe the most vulnerable, because they don't have fundings for some major security steps within the business, and for second, mostly the highest value added is being present mostly in SMEs, in the startups, in the spin-offs, which are developing high quality, high tech technologies, and which are lacking of some capital. So I think that here the role of the government here is nowadays just to reach out as much as we can, and to raise the awareness among all these startups and spin-offs, because I'm a bit afraid that the security question is not even considered by them. They are just doing business, and that's natural. Like, I mean, that's what they want to do. It's to make profit and get some capital, or get some good acquisition. But there is the toxic surcharge which they can pay, which they don't know. And so that's why I think that our as we are the office which is conducting FDI screening, our parallel role is to raise the awareness and speak to business, and sell the FDI screening mechanism as a service. Like, I mean, to say to the companies that if we can screen the capital which is coming to you, and we can say that if it's safe or not. And for more, once you are screened, you can be present on the other markets of our allies, and be presented as a company which capital or which ownership is pretty much okay. That's what as how I see it. I mean, like it's hard to imagine nowadays some creating of large funds, of state funds, which will finance some acquisitions. But I mean that the raising awareness is parallel, but the other side of the same coin, I would say.
Thank you, Otto, very much. I would have additional question for you, actually, because we will have an upcoming Czech presidency in like a couple of months, from July next year. How could we use this presidency, to make this agenda of the whole corrosive capital more broader and more on the EU level?
I mean, so regarding trade policy, it's quite specific field, because the agenda of the council is somehow driven by the agenda which just pops up because the European Commission is the entity who is implementing trade policy. So as I've said before, there is a possibility that we are going to discuss the anti-coercion instrument, which will be like a legislative file. But it's hard to guess. It's not on the table now, so we cannot be sure about it. Or we can promote, as I said, that our view of greater resilience, improved resilience, is a broader net of our FTA. So we of course will try to discuss it within the council, all the FTAs which are concluded already or are being concluded in these months. Or where is quite a pressure to conclude, say be it Chile or New Zealand, and So that's maybe regarding trade policy. That may be these topics which will be highlighted. And of course, we are promoting more cooperation within the screening offices. I would say the FDI screening offices, which is not so maybe popular for media, or even is rather technical cooperation, but still valuable, and sharing the best practice is what we can move forward. I would mention here the upcoming TTC, the Trade Technology Council, between the EU and the US, where the FDI screening is on the agenda as well.
Thank you very much. Jakub, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I would add that for the Czech EU presidency, we definitely will see who will form the Czech government after this October election. So it will be their decision, really. But as Ota mentioned, there'll be things already in the pipeline which will be happening regardless of what our government thinks. Meaning that we will have to be constructive in moderating the EU discussions as the presidency during that time. And the TTC agenda is clearly one of their, let's say, between US and the EU, where one part of the discussion, there is a working group on dual-use technologies between the EU and the Biden administration. And that discussion by summer of next year will be ongoing. And that's something where I think Czech Republic could have a positive role within the EU as well, because we in the Czech Republic have quite a strong mechanism for the regulation of exports, where they made some of the, I would say, principal decisions, according to what's publicly known, on some of the Czech companies not being allowed to sell satellite technologies to Hong Kong, meaning mainland China, for example. So we'll see how that develops, but clearly the dual-use technologies area is a thing where the US-EU discussions will be ongoing in a very practical manner within the working group of the TTC, and very practically for us within the Czech Republic, within the policy and business community, I think one of the focuses could be on, let's say, comparing the dual-use technologies list and the strategic technologies area, meaning those two discussions, try to connect them into one likely closed-door discussion between business leaders, state government agencies, and national security experts, into seeing, let's say, what's the big tranche of activities which need to be supported and protected. Because within the defense and military community, there is quite a strong focus on EDTs, emerging disruptive technologies. There is a whole NATO process for that, which is within the defense military community, and that's something where it has many civilian overlaps, where there are many companies which are working on this within the civilian sector. So I think connecting those two policy discussions would actually make sense internally within Czech Republic, and ideally on the EU level, because otherwise we will have two separate tracks. One basically military NATO discussions on EDTs, and then the strategic technologies and dual-use technologies within the, let's say, civilian agencies and ministries, which doesn't really make sense, at least on the policy level. So we'll see how we connect it. And two more things. One, Magnitsky Act. The EU has a framework for that already, which I honestly think is pretty weak, but that's the compromise we got. And hopefully we could have more of that if Czech Republic would like to have more of human rights focus in its foreign policy within the next government. So that's my hope. And the last thing was mentioned, the trade deal and discussions around it on EU-Taiwan relations. Because clearly what we could see is that the European Parliament is very actively and quite aggressively pushing forward for this, which is something what even a EU presidency has to take into account. So that I think the future is clear. We will have more aggressive China in upcoming years. We will see a friendly Taiwan, and it's really up to us as Europeans and as Czechs to see how much we could benefit from that, be it value-based or quite pragmatically business-focused relationships between Czech Republic and Taiwan. Because if you look to the Czech Republic from the Taiwan's point of view, we are one of the few countries which have a lot of Taiwanese business compared to the Chinese one, and hopefully a lot of political momentum which is on the right side, meaning supporting engagement with Taiwan on many levels, in the opposition parties, local politicians, most of the media, most of the civil society, and quite strong part of the next parliament will be on this side. We'll see how the government decides, but I think clearly that's an option which could spill over to the EU level, hopefully next summer as well.
Thank you, Jakub, for this. We have actually a few questions from the audience. Question number one, for all of you, anyone can react to that. Do you see any possibility for more cooperation between EU, US, and other G7 states in the strategic sectors where we are currently fully dependent on PRC, like semiconductors, chips, green technologies such as solar panels and batteries? So maybe Pavel, you would like to react?
Yeah, all those technologies leads to Taiwan directly, because Taiwan holds 73% of the chip production all over the world. So if the EU want to be safe regarding chips, they have to very quickly deal with Taiwan and start with some treaty about that. Otherwise, there's no other chance. EU will not make it by ourselves, that's for sure. But it's not only chips. Chip is just the end of the pyramid, because we lost independency of many sectors or many sources, especially medicine. We are not able to produce maybe 10% of the medicines. We are not able to produce in Europe anymore. So we have to get it from China, and that's medicine is very big issue. But there is a lot of other things, thousands of strategic items which we have to have under control in Europe, at least some amount, which is for us, which let us survive. But that's the supply chain issue generally. But I'm coming back to the beginning, and the question was, what should the Czech state, how should the Czech state protect from the foreign predators? So regarding the current government, they have to do only one thing: they have to stop supporting them. But the new government, they have to start talking about that very quickly, because we didn't even start discussion. Western tell that we have to invest into the cybersecurity. So we are starting discussion that we have to invest into the cybersecurity. China invested 20 years ago a lot of money to what they call security, but it's the threat. They are investing into the cyber business, how to gain control over the data, and we didn't even start to invest. So we have to start discussion, and our EU presidency is good opportunity to start it on the EU platform, because if we have some rules only in Czech Republic is not enough, because Europe is an open platform, and if we are strict and the other states will not do the same, it doesn't work. And on the other side, for example, we have a law in Czech, which is the law is 134, and the law is how to organize or how to invest public money. And under this law, always when there is a subsidy, some subventions from the government, we have to deal under this law. And there is only one criteria, and it's the lowest price. So this law is automatically telling you, you have to buy, doesn't matter what you want, you have to buy it in China. So if we do have such a law and we cannot use any other criteria, it's again against the Czech Republic.
Thank you, Pavel, for this overview. And I will ask you one additional question back to the business. If you can like elaborate more on that, what for Czech businesses could mean if they are part of any delegations, any political delegations going to Taiwan, if there are any advantages for them coming from this?
Definitely, if you are part of the political delegation, it's open you the gate to the high level of management. So we are not to dealing with Asia is very specific. It's take years if you get to the right doors. And if you go with such a political support and you visit the foreign country, and behind you is this public support and the political support, you're earning 5 or 10 years of negotiation. So it will not help the business self, but it help you to start from different position.
Yeah, and I think, thank you for this. I think businesses need to hear this more. And this is also the reason why I asked this question, so you can tell it publicly, so more people hear this. We are coming actually nearly to the end. We have approximately 10 minutes left from today's discussion. So I will leave the floor to all of you for your concluding remarks, if you have any. Jakub, do you want to start with them?
Mm-hmm. I would start. I would basically try to say what I think should be the main priorities for the policy community. Hopefully, bringing over most of the business voices, which want to let's say have the business protected in a positive way, and something because it needs to go both ways. First, the policy community thinks about what should be the priorities, and at the same time, the business leaders telling individual government leaders, political leaders, but also the expert community what needs to be done. And from what we have heard from those 30 interviews, basically the focus should be on just, let's say, several areas which should be a priority, regardless of the domestic political situation in the Czech Republic after the elections. So first, building the community around the screening of investment to make sure I mean, technically it will work fine, I'm sure, but so that it gets more, it is seen long term as a legitimate tool of the government to protect from foreign predatory behavior. That's exactly what it should be. It is, and that's how I hope it will be perceived in the future as well. So that there are Czech business leaders associations asking the government to help in this case if there are controversial cases. Second, that's more strategic. That's the strategic and dual use technologies focus, where we really need to discuss and decide as a society which areas should be more protected than others, should be more supported than others, to make sure that we are sustainable in our economic growth, but also in potential strategic shocks like the pandemic or like in a potential global conflict, which might be a political economic with countries like China. That's what I'm afraid we will see, and we need to be more resilient. So clearly decide which strategic technology areas do we work on. How do we do it? and do it in a sustainable way. So it is seen as a legitimate way of the state protecting itself as a society, as a whole. Third area, the universities. That's clearly, many of you mentioned it. Because one thing is the humanities focused universities, but we have technologically focused universities. Many of them do great research, but not always are they careful and well protected from malign behavior or corrosive capital offers, for example. So that's a big area of knowledge where we, as Czech Republic, and I think generally as Central Europe, we are not in such a bad situation where many countries are. Let's say UK, Australia, partly the US, partly Taiwan as well, have already so much of internal dependence on effectively Chinese Communist Party funding and decisions through proxies, through students, through organizations of the CCP. That's something what is not intensively felt among the Czech Republic. So we do have some time to actually think about and be wise in our decisions. How should our universities in the future interact with third countries like China, but or Russia? So to make sure we are doing it in a safe way, not endangering individual students, which is what's happening right now, I'm afraid, but also not endangering the research and therefore the will of the business leaders, business companies, which are then questioning whether they would be working with Czech universities if they see such a poor internal management and cybersecurity of some of the university centers, which is what we have been told privately, without names, by multiple actors during this summer. So this is something where we believe there should be more work done in the future. So I'll stop here. That's basically the priorities I have seen and heard from many others as well.
Thank you, Jakub, very much. So, Otto, do you want to conclude something for us?
Yeah, thank you for the floor. Just a few remarks. I agree with most what have been said here. And regarding the FDI screening comment, like last comment, I fully agree that the priority should be in interconnecting the debates on strategic technologies and interconnecting the bubbles, which are the business community let's say our office and even the security consideration of the high-tech advanced technologies. And on supply chains issue, which has been the question from the public, if I remember, I would like to underline that we can, as the EU, or not, of course, not as the Czech Republic, but not even as the EU, we cannot strive for self-dependence. We cannot, or self-sufficiency. It's an illusion, and it's the only way how to increase the resilience is just to have more eggs in the basket, which I mean more partners to trade with, and if there is some trouble with supply chains, which is not necessarily caused by political will, like the COVID pandemic or even some natural disaster, just to source or export on the other side, and internally focus on what we are good in. I mean the high-tech technologies, not to try to start. I mean, like to start a new technology from the first point, which cannot be competitive, and which is not a good way how to be self-sufficient in some technologies which we don't have. So that's not the way I believe in, which can be successful. That's from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maciej, now I will give the floor to you. Please, if you would like to react anything what was said today and final remarks.
Thank you, Andrea, and thanks to all the panelists for providing their very interesting insights into the topic. as a first observation, maybe I would like to offer that in order to deal with this corrosive capital issue, we cannot do it alone. We should not strive to do it alone as Czech Republic or alone as Slovakia. It's really necessary to have a coordinated approach both within the EU, but also within the broader community of Western-style liberal democracies, which face the similar issues throughout the world. And there is one practical reason why we need this coordinated approach, and that is to ensure that throughout this entire community we have a similar standard on how to deal with corrosive capital in order to avoid a regulatory dumping, which could create islands of corrosive capital within our broader community. Secondly, we should learn from other partners across the world, not only from the EU, which we often do, but let's look at other partners in East Asia, for example, which have a longer term history of dealing with Chinese corrosive capital. So Taiwan is, of course, one good example where we can learn, but also Japan, for example, which has a very interesting FDI screening law with very low screening thresholds, for example. And third, then this is particularly a homework for us as members of civil society, is to explain to the business leaders that in the effort to adopt anti-corrosive capital measures, we are actually not promoting anti-business regulations. These regulations are actually beneficial to the business. They are beneficial for the business environment. And long term, they promote healthy trade and investment interactions. So this is something that is a big challenge actually for us, even in Slovakia right now, when we are discussing adoption of the FDI screening law, where there has been a lot of comments and insecurities among the business community about what this new law will mean for the possibility to interact and trade with non-EU countries. So far, there has been very little communication on this from the government that this law will be beneficial to the overall business environment, and this is probably something where we as civil society can step in.
Thank you, Maciej, very much for this. Pavel, now I will give floor to you for your final remarks.
Yeah, my battery is low, so you don't see me. My final remark is, I will just underline what I already said. We have to start to say what we said, and your preparation, Jakub, is quite fantastic. You have all the tools already on the paper, but we have to start to support it and start officially talk about the threat. And if we start it, then out of this discussion should came some reaction. But the discussion have to start immediately.
That's right. I think all of us, we completely agree. And SIPE has been a great help in this, to connecting partners and to finally pushing to do more also internationally. So Jeff, I will give the floor now to you for your final remarks, and I hope that our cooperation will continue, and then all these priorities we assessed, we will take action on them together, probably.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Andrea. I mean, I probably wouldn't. We're just about the end time, and it's one of those things where they say everything has been said, but not everybody has said it, is the old saying. And I think that there's not much to add to a really fantastic substantive discussion. It was really great to hear from Pavel and Weston in particular, you know, and the ideas of how the business, it's kind of as much as said that the business community doesn't necessarily shrink in this instance, not shrinking from these issues, but leaning forward and identifying, you know, ways in which the Czech government and Czech society can protect itself with the private sector on board. And I think the Czech Republic deserves a lot of credit, both for kind of leaning forward and getting an investment screening law out there, and then having civil society groups like EVC and the business associations and the government on board to start this discussion. And we certainly hope it continues and look forward to seeing it do so. I think this upcoming Czech presidency is a really big deal and an opportunity for the new government after elections to take the lead on this at a wider European level, and really look forward to following that discussion and debate. And thanks to EVC and your team for pulling this together, and all the panelists for their efforts and their input. It's been a really enlightening discussion, and I know my colleagues and I at SIPE have found it to be very interesting.
Thank you very much, Jeff. We are happy to be in this with you, with all of you, actually. Thank you for your cooperation. And in upcoming days, we will be launching our policy report on how should the Czech state protect companies from foreign predators. So stay tuned. We will release it publicly for all of you. And then I hope the more cooperation will start with all of us. So thank you for watching us. Thanks again to CIPE, Center for International Private Enterprise, to partner on this with us, and we will see you sometime soon. So thank you for watching, and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thanks, everyone.